Right, now it is time to continue our conversation on Ebola, and we'll first start with looking at how Ebola is transmitted. So, outbreaks in human populations often begin with the consumption of infected ape meat. Apes are consumed by people regulated to lower economic statuses with little access to other food resources. Outbreaks then often begin in poor, isolated villages or slum regions of larger cities in West African nations. Now, we need to discuss what is known as a reservoir host. So, bats function as the primary host for the Ebola virus, as well as many other zoonotic diseases. It is suspected that bats have strengthened immune systems that allow them to be carriers of zoonotic diseases while not being susceptible to the disease themselves. Ebola infection is spread to human and non-human apes via either the direct consumption or via viral reigning. Now, viral reigning is a process of virus exposure through environmental contact. So, for example, an ape being exposed to bat guano while sleeping in a cave filled with roosting bats. Now, spillover is when you actually have the transmission of Ebola from bats to apes, and this typically occurs in pulses. Now, there are several conditions for spillover. So, first, you need to have a co-occurrence of reservoir hosts and recipients. So, political and economic forces have driven disenfranchised human populations to increase ape hunting, and also have adjusted bat roosting locales, creating greater opportunity for infection of apes by infected bats. Now, there are two explanations for infection pulses. So this is the idea that the flow of viral infection between populations is not constant. So the first hypothesis is what is called the episodic shedding hypothesis. This is when the host's immune system typically suppresses the virus, so the host here being the bat. Now, in moments of environmental stress, such as food scarcity or human incursion, pregnancy, or encountering other stresses may weaken the immune system. This results in a resurgence of infection by the Ebola virus in the host population, resulting in viral shedding to recipient host populations. Now, an alternative hypothesis is what is called the transient epidemic hypothesis. So this is the process of viral recolonization of bat roosts. So over time, bat populations experience waning immunity as older individuals who are resistant die, and younger individuals who have either weaker immune systems or have never been exposed to the virus replace them. So essentially, generational replacement results in a population that is susceptible to viral infection that will result in viral shedding in recipient hosts. In all actuality, it is most likely a combination of these hypotheses that best explains the process. Now, we're going to kind of shift gears now and look at variation in susceptibility to Ebola. And most of what's covered is extremely limited in that we don't actually know much about human susceptibility to Ebola and the amount of variation therein. So, the reasons for this lack of information is that prior to the 2014 outbreak, affluent nations were not invested in investigating the virus, as there was minimal risk of exposure, and so there was no financial incentive. And the high mortality rate in all ape populations, in conjunction with few case numbers, resulted in a limited to absent research samples. Now, looking at the immune response, human populations overall lack any antigen-specific immunity to Ebola virus, meaning there is no memory B cells to flood the system with antibodies upon infection, and all members of the population then are susceptible, not just those with compromised immune systems. Now, in looking at the innate immunity seems to play a critical role in severity of Ebola infection. So an early or rapid inflammatory response appears to reduce the infection rate of the virus within the system, allowing time for the adaptive immune system to initiate an antigen-specific response. Now, this may result in some people being able to fight the infection without exhibiting symptoms. Now, a late or slowed inflammatory response to the Ebola virus essentially results in the virus being able to escape the innate immunity's mechanisms. The virus then, through cell infection, inhibits the innate and adaptive immunity, and this results in viral flooding of the system, ultimately resulting in death. Now, the significance of this variation is that variation in response time of innate immune system appears to be critical to an individual's survivability after infection. Genes that result in the innate immune system's response time are now targets of natural selection in populations experiencing Ebola outbreaks.